So today we're going to start off by thinking about how do you describe yourself? When someone asks you out in public, you run into someone at the office or you're at a public place, it doesn't really matter. But someone asks you, how are you doing? How do you describe your life to others? How do you describe your life to others? When someone asks you that question, how are you doing? How often do you just say, hey, I'm just getting by. I'm just trying to make it through the week. I'm just trying to keep it in the road. How often do you feel like you're just barely keeping your head above water? How often do you feel that way? We live in a culture that glorifies hustling and grinding. So we're taught in many ways that life should feel that way. A constant struggle and a constant grind. It means that we're working hard, or at least that's what we're told. We wear our exhaustion like it's a badge of honor. We believe that we must constantly be striving and pushing, or we're not progressing. And we want to force our way forward just to survive, many of us. But what if just surviving, is actually a trap? What if the constant striving that we're doing, to keep your life intact is exactly what is keeping you from truly flourishing? What we're going to talk about today on ReThink Podcast is what it means to actually live. Tips today is for striving, not just surviving. We're not going to talk about how to strive harder or hustle faster. We're going to explore how we can move out of a mental state of mere survival, and step into a life of proactive thriving. Proactive thriving. This is intentional mindset that I am above and not below. I'm the head and not the tail. We're moving from the panic of hustle into the peace of alignment, into that knowing. So let's be honest about what survival mode actually feels like. This is the problem. We're about to just discuss in detail the problem so that we're all level set and we all understand where we're coming from. Let's talk about what it feels like to be in that survival mode. When you wake up, your brain instantly goes into the defensive mode because you're getting yourself ready for today. You may feel overwhelmed almost immediately getting out of bed. Feels like multiple forces hit you simultaneously. You pick up the things that you left last night, if you were able to sleep. You tell yourself, if I can just make it through Friday, or make it to Friday, if I can just make it through today, if I can just get through this trip, then I can get some rest and everything will be okay. But the truth is, Friday comes, the trip is over, and you still feel exhausted. Still other things to do. You're too exhausted to enjoy the trip. And by Sunday evening, the dread starts all over again. So, because Monday's tomorrow. What does this create? It creates a deep inner struggle. You are alive. That is true enough. You're alive. But you feel disconnected from your true purpose. You don't feel any level of fulfillment. You are surviving. Surviving is frequently characterized as a reactive, defense-oriented existence. Let me say that again. Surviving, this grinding and hustling. Surviving is frequently characterized as a reactive, a defense-oriented existence. It's a grim struggle. You might try to escape this feeling by, just striving harder. But the truth of the matter is you set massive goals and then you try to force a new routine, but it feels like you're swimming upstream. You are pouring out immense amounts of energy, mental and physical many times. Yet, your reality remains the same, virtually unchanged. Why does this feel so heavy? Why does this happen? And that's because surviving is not a life that you truly want for yourself. No one wants to just survive. When you're stuck in survival mode, which is where you are if you're just surviving, you're not building a future. You're just maintaining for today. You're simply defending your current position. What's the cause of this? Why do we stay stuck in this exhausting loop of striving? Why do we stay stuck in this exhausted loop of surviving? Well, first of all, it's not because you lack discipline. It is because your subconscious programming hasn't been addressed. You haven't addressed your core identity, your subconscious programming or your self-concept. This is what we've been talking about. If you've been listening to us for the last 4 or 5 podcasts, we've really been hitting hard on reorganizing, redeveloping, restructuring your self-concept, because at the core of everything, and I'm telling you this from experience, you can try and do a lot of different things, adopt different behaviors and routines and things like that. But at the core of it, if you haven't addressed your self-concept, and your self-concept being defined as understanding who you believe yourself to be, if that is still in place and it's old, no new thing is going to survive. You're going to find a way to self-sabotage. You're going to come back to that programming. So when you live in survival mode, for example, you're operating from a certain identity of lack. You view the world through a particular or a fixed mindset where every challenge is a threat. It's a threat to your stability. A potential failure is on the way. Maybe you feel inadequate. And in this state, your subconscious mind is constantly scanning for danger. You're kind of like in that fight or flight area. It assumes that effort and struggle and force are the only ways that can keep you safe. We also trap ourselves in the duality of compulsion. You tell yourself perhaps, hey, I must achieve this goal or I must not fail. I've got to do this or I got to do that. And maybe you think that I'll finally thrive when I get these things done. When I get this promotion, when I get married, or when I find a husband, when I find a wife, when I lose this weight. I'll finally be happy when I pay off all this debt. I'll finally be happy when I make 6 figures, when I get this car, when I finally close on my house. I'll finally be happy when I'm the vice president. Take a listen. Do you hear the trap? Do you see the trap here? By placing your thriving in the future, you are subconsciously affirming to your brain, what? That I currently am not who I want to be. You do not have it now. You are affirming that I don't have what I want right now. I'm not who I want to be right now. You're vibrating at a frequency of lack. And furthermore, you're likely focusing entirely on the outcome rather than the systems that produced it. So we're looking at the wrong meter. We're looking in the wrong place. We're only focused on the outcome. Purely goal-oriented mindsets restrict our happiness to the next milestone and the next milestone and the next goal and the next achievement. I have been there. I have done that. And I don't care how much you achieve, how many milestones you check off your list. I don't care what it is. When you get the house, when you get the car, when you get the promotion, I've gotten all of those things. None of those come with fulfillment. All of them lead to another milestone. All of them lead to additional life challenges. So you cannot outwork a survival-based self-concept. You cannot outwork it. That's who you are until you change it. And if your underlying identity is that, and you're saying to yourself, I'm someone who struggles, I'm someone in lack, your brain's going to always look for a way to prove that. We've talked about this. This is your reticular activating system. It's going to always look for a way to prove that. So you got to shift out of that thinking. And to shift from that surviving to thriving, you do not need more willpower. What you need is a shift in consciousness. You need a shift in your level of awareness. You need to shift from who you are now to who you want to be now. Be that person now. Be that person now. I'm going to give you some solutions. This is what we came for. How do we make this leap? You've heard people in this space talk about quantum leaping, and maybe that's a little much for you. I'm going to see if I can narrow it down a little bit, make it a little bit more layman's terms. How do we stop fighting the current programming? that we have, and we start designing our reality the way that we want it to be. We do it through an intense awareness and identity shifting. It's got to be a shift. Okay, it's got to be a shift. Transitioning from surviving to thriving is a process. And it's a process of rewriting the landscape of your life. Here are 3 practical ways that you can reprogram your mind. The first way is to shift your identity to what? The thriver. That's who you want to be. Become that now. Identity shifting is all about realizing now that you are already the person that you want to be. You do not need to do anything. You do not act to become someone. There's no action involved. You simply have to shift your level of consciousness to that individual. Who is it that I want to be? I want to be the thriver, not the survivor. Well, say to yourself, that's who I am now. And action will come based on who you say you are. Okay? You act because of who you are. I want you to name the best version of yourself. We talk here a lot of times, we talk about our higher self, our true higher self. And that is the peak and the epitome of who you are. And that version of you in the quantum exists while you exist in light. So there are multiple versions of you. And I keep saying I'm going to do a podcast on quantum and quantum jumping and things like that. But the short of it is this: a particle exists until it is recognized or noticed or paid attention to. It exists in multiple areas, in multiple fields. And so that means there are multiple versions of yourself in existence. There's a version of you that has everything you want, and then a version of you that doesn't have anything that you want. And there are all these versions in the middle. And you can quantum leap by simply deciding that this is the version I want to be today. And only acting from that version of yourself. Now you say, Kelly, it sounds pie in the sky, magic thinking, awful easy. Here's what I'll tell you about that. One, if you say that, then you've never tried it, so you don't know if it's true or not. Number 2, you may be legalistic and religious, and you grew up like I did in a lot of programming. And no one told you this because you run through the temple and start knocking tables over. Okay. So here's the deal. You are much more powerful than you know, and you don't have to have signs and wonders to know who you are. Okay. So like I always say here, if nothing else, why don't you try it for 30 days? If you never tried it, try it for 30 days and let's see. Simply decide that you are a thriver, and all day and all week, only act from that version of yourself. Make decisions as a thriver. Talk to other people as a thriver. Talk to yourself as if you are a thriver. Only allow yourself to be a thriver. If you thrive and you are on top and not below, if you are the head and not the tail, then you really don't worry about not having something, right? The version of you now, you're hustling and trying to survive because you're concerned that these things are going to run out, and I'm not going to have, and I'm not going to be able to pay this, and I'm not going to be able to buy that. I'm not going to be able to go here. I'm not going to be. That's what you're doing now, but reverse it. Reverse it. Assume the feeling of that reality today. A person who is thriving does not defensively does not react defensively in email or in conversation. They respond calmly. They're authoritative. They're confident. They're secure. And when you step into this identity first, the actions that you need to support this type of lifestyle will come. This is what we were not taught. We were taught to work hard, and hard work is going to manifest into this and into that. And listen, I'm not beating anybody across the head that has integrity and puts in a good day's work. But what I'm telling you is that there is another way, a better way, a way that fits your nature, and it is a more spiritual way, in that you can act from your actual self-concept, from your consciousness, from your divine authority. And instead of wasting time doing things that don't really matter and they're not benefiting you and they're not moving you closer to your goal, you will act from a place of divine awareness. You'll listen to that still small voice. And you'll only be concentrated on the things that really matter. So when you move, it'll be more authoritative. You'll have the confidence. You'll have the security. Number 2, observe your survival triggers. What triggers you? To break free from this survival mode, you've got to know what triggers you. You must become intensely aware of your mind. And just a disclaimer, you cannot trust your mind. You cannot trust your own mind. You cannot trust your mind. Your mind is where the programming is. Develop the ability to capture your swiftest thoughts at the moment where these triggers occur. Do not trust your mind. Understand that you have a mind. You're not your mind. You observe your mind. Say to yourself, I'm observing a feeling of anxiety, for example. By stepping back and simply watching this thought, you strip it down of its power, number 1, and you move from being a victim of the circumstance of your mind to becoming the observer of your life. How is this helpful? So many times we make decisions based on what we are thinking at the time. And if you're not aware that you're not your mind, and if you're not aware that your mind will give you bad information sometimes, you will act on bad information. What do I mean? Well, you may assume a certain thing to be true, or you may assume, let's say the thing is actually true. You don't know what an outcome is going to be. You don't know. You know what you want it to be, but the way we operate normally is that we project every 17 seconds more and more into a scenario, into a thought pattern, into a stream of thought that predominantly goes negative. I don't care if you're going for a job or trying to ask somebody out for a date or trying to figure out where your husband is this late at night. The thoughts will go, and they will go downhill fast. And if you don't catch yourself, you're going to make a decision based on bad information and out of emotion. How many times, just answer this to yourself. How many times, hopefully you've done this, how many times have you sat back and saw the trajectory of your thoughts and then got information on the reality of the situation and thought, how far away was I from this? I thought my husband was here. He's running late, or he's never. Something must be going on. And when you finally got the information, it was completely not that. But had you listened to your mind, which led you all the way down, Corruption Street, you may have made a decision about a certain activity that wasn't even taking place. So use your mind for what it's worth, but do not trust it fully. Always question the thoughts that come into your mind. So number 2 is observe your survival triggers. Number 3, you must build systems, not just goals. You must build systems, not just goals. Thriving is a proactive, growth-oriented state. It requires sustainable habits. So stop setting massive goals, exhausting goals that require you to strive until you're burnt out. Instead, focus on your daily process. Focus on you. James Clear reminds us that results are simply a lagging measure of our habits. Results, again, are just a lagging measure of our habits. So focus on just getting a little bit better every day. Let's call it 1%. Let's get a little bit better every day. Establish small positive rituals that are going to replenish your energy, that focus on you. Take 5 minutes of stillness in the morning. Take 15. Shift your focus to gratitude. You may not be exactly where you want to be in life. You may not have exactly what you want to have in life yet, but be grateful for what you do have. Focus on gratitude. These are some tiny, consistent systems that you can put in place that once they compound, they become very significant and they end up in long-term growth. So you realize that true transformation doesn't require you to force the world to bend to your will, right? After we've had this wonderful discussion. Instead, what you realize is that change, it can happen naturally and organically. And when you align with your internal identity, with your life can become more of what you desire. When you align with your true higher self, when you get into alignment and you listen, the difference is you are the head and not the tail. You're above and not below. You do not come at it from a point of lack, and there's no anxiety and stress involved. You know that this is going to work out in your favor, and you're actually looking forward to the challenge, because the challenge really is there for life to expose to you your level of creativity. Your true awareness comes through these challenges, and you understanding that you are a creator. Self-realization. This is what the challenges are all about. The challenges come so you can prove to yourself that you are God. Those 3 words that U.S. Anderson said years ago, those 3 magic words, you are God. That's the reason we have the challenge, and that we will always have challenges. Your view setback says failures if you don't do this, but when you come from a creative standpoint, you see these opportunities to practice your resilience and to adopt new approaches and to conquer challenges in different ways. Remember, perfection is not the requirement here. This is about gentle, consistent awareness. You're moving from a state of reacting. You're moving into a state of alignment. No more reacting. More alignment, intention. All right, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. You want to support the podcast. You want to know how to shift identities and quantum leap. We do have a workbook. You can go to our website. I'll make sure we have it into the show notes in our bio. This is an awesome series. We're going to get more going here, but I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. I'm going to be back again soon. You guys be well. Be well, be well, be well. Listen to the podcast over again, and you'll hear more the second time. Thanks.